Well, to discuss then what all of this means for Mexico, our foreign affairs editor Rob Parsons joins me here on set. Rob, good morning.
Good morning.
Let's start off then by just talking us through what some of the key issues that this election in Mexico has been fought over.
Well, the first thing that has to be said is this is a massive victory for Lopez Obrador. Somewhere in the region of 30% over his closest rival. And that is because he has largely managed to tap into the anger of ordinary Mexicans about the state of the country, about the inequalities in the country, the violence and so on. And three of the main issues that I think he's focused on: violence and crime, corruption and poverty. And he's hammered home at those points throughout his campaign, which started way back in September last year, complaining about the mafia of power, as he put it. And that, I think, is what has driven his campaign forward. Violence, in particular, has been appalling in Mexico for the last couple of decades, rising to somewhere in the region, close to 300,000 people over the last 2 decades. 29,000 people killed last year alone, 2,900 just this May alone. So that has been the focus of his attention. But he's saying the key issue here: how do you combat violence? How do you deal with it? And he's saying that the answer to that is you deal, first of all, with poverty. You've got to redistribute wealth in a country in which somewhere in the region of 53 million people live, according to Mexico's own standards, in poverty. 53 million, up from 49 million at the start of the previous president's campaign. Those, I think, are going to be the issues then. Poverty, fighting corruption, ranked by Amnesty International in the bottom 25% of the world's states. How do you turn that around? Well, he's saying the only way you can do it is by dealing with poverty, first of all.
And what of Lopez Obrador himself then? We know he's a leftist figure, but what does he stand for?
Well, Lopez Obrador, started off his career as a lawyer defending the indigenous population in his native Tabasco state. And we know a little bit more about him because back in 2000, he became mayor of Mexico City. Over 20 million people, one of the biggest cities in the world. And he gave us a pretty good idea then of the sort of policies we're likely to see from him as president. The accent on slashing the bloated bureaucracy of Mexico City state is likely to be repeated again now that he becomes president. He slashed to the salaries of the senior aides. He redistributed, gave more money, raised the wages of the sort of lower level workers. He cut back on expense accounts for senior workers. He himself lived extremely modestly, had a small flat, drove around in a Nissan estate car rather than the big Mercedes that people have been used to from their leaders in Mexico. And I think that's the sort of thing we're going to start seeing from him. Populist measures. But the problem will be, when it comes to substance, how is he going to go about ensuring that the economy continues to grow? How is he going to ensure that there will be a redistribution of the wealth without causing the sort of political opposition that he'll no doubt be worrying about as the future comes forward?
Well, as critics then calling him Mexico's Hugo Chavez and really warning that his economic ideas could spell plenty of fiscal problems for the country. Do those concerns really stack up?
Well, you're right. There have been accusations that he is a Mexican Hugo Chavez. I think there's very little real evidence to suggest that's the case. We only have to look at what he did when he was mayor of Mexico City. There was none of the sort of revolutionary fervor that characterized the Chavista movement in Venezuela. Perhaps a closer analogy might be Lula da Silva in Brazil, where there was certainly a redistribution of wealth. But the policies pursued by da Silva were more centrist, by and large. There was no attempt to undermine the capitalist system or the system of democracy in Brazil. And I think that's more likely to be the path that we will see from Lopez Obrador as the years roll forward.
Rob, thank you very much indeed. Rob Parsons there, our foreign affairs editor, with some analysis for you on our top story this hour, that election win in Mexico.